Hello, my name is David Ferguson.
And I'm Sean Patterson, and we are the directors of Rewired Consulting.
We would like to welcome you to the Rewired Consultant podcast featuring guests from across the IT industry.
We will be talking to technology leaders from all over New Zealand, providing unique insight and good chat with the people on the front line of innovation and transformation.
This series will give you a great opportunity to hear the stories of the people involved and create the strategy and vision for some of New Zealand's most interesting businesses. And welcome back to the Rewired Consultant podcast with myself, David Ferguson, and my co-host, as always, Sean Patterson. This is the first episode of season 3, and today's guest is Steve Aitken. He's a technology and business leader with more than 25 years of experience across consulting, digital transformation, data and AI, including scaling and leading high-growth technology businesses both in New Zealand and internationally. Stephen began his career in technology here in New Zealand before moving to the UK, where he stepped into senior leadership roles and gained international experience that helped shape his career and leadership style. He's now the founder of Manuka AI, helping Kiwi and Australian businesses understand and adopt AI in practical ways as we move into the next phase of rapid AI transformation. In today's conversation, we'll talk to Stephen about his early career journey, the lessons from his time in the UK, the vision behind Manuka AI, and how he sees the New Zealand technology industry and global industry evolving over the coming years. Welcome to the podcast. Steve, how are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thanks
No
very
problem
much.
at
for
all. I
having
know
me.
we've been talking for a wee while to get you on the podcast, so very, very, very happy to have you on.
Yeah, thanks very much. I know I've been a bit elusive.
So look, in terms of how we generally run these podcasts, we always want to understand how somebody got into their sort of chosen career, and we always get quite interesting stories and different sort of angles from where they came from. But with yourself, Steve, how did your career start, and how did it sort of lead into technology?
Yeah, cool. It sort of fell into the career, I sort of went to uni thinking I was going to become an accountant. Came out having a major in information systems. I've just got my printer going crazy in the background. Hang on, let's pull that out of the wall.
I was wondering what that noise was.
Well, yeah.
So I don't know why I haven't used it in years, and I don't know, decided to load some paper today. Started off. I went to uni thinking accountancy. I came out with an IS degree in information systems law, so quite different. Found out that I wasn't very good with numbers and better with code. So that's sort of how I got into it. The final year of uni, we did a paper called 636-101, and it's amazing that I can remember that paper number. But it was kind of innovative at the time. It was to tie together industry and tie together university. So the grade at the end of the year was part graded by the university and part graded by a company that you work for. And I ended up building a time sheeting system for a small consultancy in something called Access 97, which not many people know. It's pre-VB .net. It was quite immature at the time. It was quite mature at the time, but it's quite immature if you look back. Worked there. I ended up working for that company, a company called Aitken that became Code HQ. Still going here in Auckland. Was their first employee actually. So 5 founders and me. And I think that sort of really shaped my career, to be honest, because working for a small company, getting exposure to all parts of the business, whether it be just writing code or whether it be a little bit of business analysis or just listening to the founders talking about how they sell or manage the business, that kind of got my juices flowing, and I've sort of stayed in that small business space ever since, and enjoy building companies. So that entrepreneurial.
And that's the thing, was the founders of that, were they, like, in terms of their entrepreneurial spirit and how they ran the business, was it quite inspiring to see as a young person coming into the industry?
Well, it was, because they were only a couple of years older than us, right? So they left uni and started the business 2 or 3 years prior to me joining. The 5 of them had no real business experience either when they started, right? So it it was good to work in that environment where your bosses are young, same sort of mindset. It was good.
Excellent.
Really
Okay.
good.
And then from there, where did it progress from there? So you spent how many? Did you say you spent 5 years there? Yeah. Oh, 2 years.
2 years, and actually probably a year of that was over in Australia. So I got seconded over to work on a project and do some training on a product called Onyx. This was 1999, pre-bubble burst. It was it was probably the first web-based CRM system. And now, what I mean by web-based, it wasn't hosted in a data center like a cloud is today. It was hosted on-premise, but it was accessed through a web browser. And I sort of worked on that, learned that tech stack. It was HTML, ASP, SQL Server, and eventually .com when that came out. .NET when that came out. And yeah, worked there for a couple of clients in Aussie, and then I decided to go on my OE. So I only had 2 years experience going over to the UK. I managed to, through that limited time, I'd built a network, and I think that network's really important. I still catch up. In fact, I've just used one of the people I worked with back then in 1999 to deliver our HubSpot implementation this year. So keeping that network. But one of the guys had moved to the UK, and I went on to work for him in the UK and work on UK clients doing Onyx as well. I rode that wave as a contractor through to probably 2007, 2008, when really that technology was dying out. Microsoft Dynamics had entered the market. Onyx's share price had crashed, been bought out by a couple of companies, and decided to make my way into Microsoft Dynamics. So I converted my my contracting company, which was Simply CRM, into trying to build it out into a proper business. So I went to hire somebody who I'd worked with previously, and he reverse hired me. He said, "Don't be silly. Dynamics isn't the future. Salesforce is the future. Come and project manage something for me. See if you like it. Come join this business." So I ended up joining a new startup called Tequila, Tequila without an E, and worked my way up to become COO. And that was really interesting because I could see for the previous couple of years as my own business, I've been sort of struggling to get off the ground. I had a few clients, really making decisions to hire a salesperson or hire contractors or perm. Each decision was really measured and really thought through. Whereas when I went into this new business, they'd just been VC backed by Salesforce Ventures and by a high net worth individual, and I could see just having the money and what that could do to accelerate growth, right? So, the first few days it was like, oh, we need 3 senior architects, we need 2 developers. I'm sitting there going, what? You guys are, it was insane. So they boomed, and we built that business up to about 150 people over a 5-year period, and I'd say really the bulk of that growth was in the back end because we had a couple of failed starts there, right? We were 6 months in, we were still having our leadership meetings in the pub and not really knowing what we were doing. But by the time year 5 came around, we were flying. It was the best time in the market for Salesforce. It was a real growth industry or growth technology in the UK at that time. And that was probably the second lesson I took as well, being in the right technology at the right time.
Was it a big difference, Steve, when you moved to the UK and the way of working compared to maybe New Zealand and Australia? Was it a bit of a culture shock?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting you say that because when I went over, and that was 2002. Everyone said, "Oh yeah, the UK people are a bit more relaxed. They go to the pub at 12 o'clock and don't come back after the pub, and they rock up at 9:30." It's certainly not my experience of the UK. Maybe that's outside London, or maybe it's outside the tech industry. But sure, people did rock up to work a little bit later, but generally caused by problems on the tube, and then they'd stay through, and that you'd do a full day there for sure. It's not this laid back work that I'd heard of. But I guess the interesting bit about the UK is you get exposure to, well, firstly, coming from New Zealand, the
Mm.
UK is a big market, right? So it's I don't know, about 60 million people, might be more now. Um, so 10 or 15 times bigger than New Zealand, but yet the country itself is probably something similar. But no one thinks about the UK market in itself, but
Yeah.
we always thought about Europe. So, we were working with companies like DHL based out in Germany, Pernod Ricard from
Mm.
France, Renault France, and then the UK companies like Tesco's, Marks and Spencers, and you just get access to those really big companies who are thinking on a much more global scale than just
Yeah, and it was
like New
a
Zealand.
freer market then as well because the borders where it was pre Brexit and that as well. So in terms of actually operating in those markets, it was pretty straightforward, wouldn't it have been once you had like a good business or a good product?
Yeah, I mean the only
Yeah,
problem there is the language difficulty and cultural difficulty, right? Working with some of those markets is an interesting endeavor, but yeah, it definitely there's a much larger labor pool and a much larger customer base. Like if you, I feel like over here in New Zealand, and I've only just come back 4 years ago, but everyone
yeah,
knows everyone in the market, right? And business and jobs are often done through those relationships. Over in the UK, you don't have those relationships. So you do at the senior level, but at a more junior level, those relationships don't exist. Um, or they do exist, but you have the opportunity to pull people in that
yeah.
aren't part of that network. So it's a lot easier to a much more fluid labour market that can move around without having to know
How
someone
did
at the
you
other
find
end.
it yourself? Like, because obviously you work with businesses that scaled and grew pretty quickly, and that obviously tests you as a leader and an organizer and all those sort of things as well. Like, did you find did some of it come a bit too fast in terms of the growth to sort of actually deal with it, or did you feel like you were not so?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I'm the first to say I probably messed up a few times. No, yeah, everything's changing every day, and that's what I love about startups, right? The every day is completely different, and you've got to get muck in and pick up what's the balls that are getting dropped effectively. I kind of have this weird number in my head at 72 people. Once you get to 72 people, the wheels come off, right? I don't know what it is. I don't know why it's 72, but at that point, you kind of have to bring in
Yeah,
another layer of structure, whether it be putting in sort of practice leads to sort of own and operate one part of the business, or you need to bring in an HR person to start managing career paths and things like that more effectively. Yeah, all of those sorts of things sort of need to come in at around about that 72 people
What
size
and
business.
obviously you worked for a number of years in London, Steve. But what would you say is your, if you were to look back on it, your kind of proudest achievement and the businesses that you worked with and left? And yeah, if you were to summarize what your key if somebody asked you your key achievement or your best achievement in London, what would you say it was?
Yeah, interesting. So I was COO at Tequila, and I was CEO at Sapien i7, which was another business we did in the Salesforce space. Um, the biggest achievement I think is actually Tequila, even though I was not in the full
Yep.
leadership role of CEO. Um, that was a bigger business. We built it to the 150 mark and sold it on to Accenture. Um, the reason I'm proud of that is
Yeah.
we really hired really well, right? So we had 5 to 10 people that were entrepreneurs. They became those practice leads. They didn't need a lot of direction. They just knew, and they got it wrong, but they learned from those mistakes, and they drove with something which I call
Mm.
intrinsic motivation. Um, and I don't know if you read much, but there's a book called Drive by a guy called Dan Pink, and he talks about intrinsic motivation, and how if you give someone purpose, autonomy and mastery that will really drive their career, right? So purpose being, you now own this part of the business and your target is to get to X revenue or this margin or this many customers. Uh, Autonomy is, not being directed to do that. You've got to find your own way and make mistakes along the way. And then mastery is that ability to learn as you go along. So I'm a big believer in that. And I think of these 10 people, they all had that intrinsic motivation. And as we went through the acquisition and post acquisition, those 10 people went on to start their own businesses. And so it's kind of like a little mini Silicon Valley. Business goes up, everyone disappears, and they start their own businesses. So, they've gone on to do their own things, and I'm sure they're doing the same with their businesses as well. There's people that are splintering off and doing stuff. So that's probably my proudest moment, is actually maybe not actually the sale, but seeing the growth of those people that have gone on to do
Good
other
stuff.
things.
And look, out of interest as well, because obviously you've been at businesses that were acquired by obviously large organizations. So you mentioned Accenture. Like, in terms of like, because obviously it was your business. It was your business. You had like, how was that transit? Because just because anybody who has a business, they're thinking like, I want an exit, and there's obviously the exits, the what you want to get to. But those, like, was it a year or two? Would you have to stay on with Accenture for a year or two? And how did you find that transition from not having full ownership? Yeah,
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough, right? So I've got a lot of respect for Accenture. At the time, they're about 400, 500,000 people. I think they're up to about 800, 900,000 globally now. They've got some really talented, highly respected people running that business. Um, but they're geared up for big business, right? If you're a Coca Cola or at that sort of scale, or a pharmaceutical company, and you need to do a transformation around the world, there's
yeah,
only really one company that you can call
Yeah.
Accenture, and maybe there's one or two others, right? But and that's what they get up for doing, and they'll sell $100 million deals, and that's great. Um,
yeah,
that didn't interest me. Like being on $100 million deal, um, turning up to the same place every day, working on the same thing for 2-3 years, isn't my bread and butter. Um, I prefer the dynamic, smaller deals, lots of engagement, different every day is different, and at the time we were very much sort of on the leading edge of like uh, DevOps, agile, um, you know, pair programming, that sort of thing. And Accenture weren't
yeah,
quite there at that time, right? So they were trying to bring that in. So we had a lot of people leave because of that. They wanted to be on that frontier of what was happening in the industry. And if you're on a $200 million deal at one of the big companies around the world, you're not changing to move from a really structured waterfall approach and um, uh, maybe delivery or change management to some of these newer,
yeah.
riskier, perceived riskier.
Well, it seems like across there's a bit of a trend now. Like, that's the thing, but it seems like clients and businesses. Do you feel that there's a bit of a trend that those sort of smaller niche consultancies are gaining more, and people trust them a bit more and want to work with them a bit more because of that personal touch as well, as opposed to that bigger, large organization? Or because you mentioned Accenture was the one that got you those massive deals, but it seems like it seems to be moving slightly away from that. Does it feel?
Yeah, I mean, a lot's changed in the market, right? We had the fiasco in Australia by one of
Yeah,
the big GSIs that sort of has changed consulting in government a lot. Um, And I think that's led to government looking at some of the tier two, tier three players as well. I think I'm always on the other side of the fence, right? So I'm on the smaller business side, and I always kind of laugh when we lose deals to some of the bigger guys because I'm sitting at my team and I've hired the people that were great coming out of Accenture and
yeah,
they're working in my team. And you're coming and hiring, sorry, I shouldn't say Accenture, but any of the GSIs. But I'm hiring those people, the best of the best out of those organizations. And then they're going to work with those organizations and
yeah.
paying a higher premium.
Yeah.
they could be working with essentially the same people, but in a smaller business, and in a much more narrow space, right? So the businesses that I've run are, Salesforce and Databricks and Microsoft Dynamics, but they've been very tied to a technology. So I can see where there's value in the GSIs coming in and doing maybe some strategy, some agnostic work to say, this is what you need, and you need a CRM system. You've got choice of A, B, and C. But once you've made that choice, there's a real expertise that we have in our field, right? Like whether it be, at the solution architecture level, people that have been in that space for 10, 15, 20 years and have adopted, in this case, Databricks, which is what we're doing now. And they live and breathe it every day. They're passionate about it. They go to the meetups. They write blogs. They're speaking at events on that topic, and they're very expert in that domain. Some of the bigger companies are a little bit more generalist.
And look, obviously, you've come back to New Zealand. Was that always the plan, or could you
It was always a plan. It was a plan. It took me about 10 or 12 years to get back to New Zealand when the plan was made. I wanted to have kids here. Maybe not have kids, but when they went to school. Unfortunately, we just sold. I think we were still building Tequila at the time, and I didn't want to leave when my son was born, and then when the opportunity for him to go to school, we're still sort of tied into earnouts and things like that. And then another opportunity came up, which was to build another joint venture with Publicis Group, a company that was called Sapien i7, another Salesforce business that we scaled to about 63 people over 18 or 24 months, and then sold that off just luckily pre-COVID, 20th of February 2020.
Just in time.
About that period of time. Lockdown in the UK hit about 8th of March, I think. So that was great, and we so that happened, and I rode that wave. So it wasn't the right time to come back, and then eventually I led the Salesforce practice for Publicis Sapien outside of North America, and it just, my wife said, look, if it's not now, when's it going to be? There's always going to be a better opportunity. And parents getting old, and my son was starting secondary school, so it was time to.
Were you able to settle okay when you came back, Steve? After so long, were you able to settle back to New Zealand?
No, I'd say we're still settling back in. It's coming up 4 years in July. I think it's a weird one because even coming back, I'm still working in Australia. So I ended up integrating a business that we'd acquired prior to me leaving the UK into Australia, into Publicis Sapien in Australia. So I was working. My whole team was in Australia. I was the only one here in New Zealand. And even now, I'm working mainly with Australians, although we're starting to build a New Zealand team here. So really just starting to settle in. I would recommend to anyone that goes away, I was away for 20 years, keep in touch with home. I think that's something I didn't do very well. I didn't keep my network alive at home. I've got a much bigger network in the UK and even in Australia than here in New Zealand. And it's trying to re-engage.
It's a lot easier to do nowadays than it was, 15, 20 years ago as well, right? 15, 20 years ago as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's easy to jump on a WhatsApp call with somebody. It's just the time zone that becomes a bit of a problem.
So Steve, let's talk about Manuka AI. So Steve, tell us about your business and the services it's offer, and obviously what you're doing with it at the moment. It'd be good to get insight into it.
Yeah, so we're probably 8 months in now. We're VC backed, so I actually use the same VC that we've done Tequila and Sapien i7 with. So we're well funded, which is nice. We focus solely on Databricks. So Databricks is a lakehouse technology. It's based on open source technology. So it provides a place where you can bring all your data into a single lakehouse and offer that up to all different personas, whether it be business intelligence use or predictive analytics or ML or AI type use cases. So we are doing everything from migrating customers off of legacy technology like Teradata and SQL Server and Oracle onto this cloud platform, and enabling that to be used for AI. So we hear lots of people are struggling to really get value out of their AI platforms. I think there's a few things holding that up. One of it is not having the right data in the right format, right? So it's not clean, it's not governed, and it's not accessible. So Databricks creates that environment where it is all of those things. It's well governed through Unity Catalog, or it's in this lakehouse architecture, which provides a cheap storage and high scalable compute. And then you can build your agents and build your whole sort of agent platform on that. And we're working with a customer today who it's really interesting, this space. Like every vendor has AI, right? So if you talk to Salesforce, they've got Agentforce, and ServiceNow have their version, and there's Agent OS, and there's like 1,000 different platforms and 1,000 different software tools that are now enabled by AI. But what we're seeing is CIOs, CDOs, chief AI officers are struggling to understand what's being used, what's not being used. Is it being used in an optimal way? Is it effective? So we're working with one customer and we're speaking to a number of others. It's a common theme that's coming up in the market is the need to get some governance around that. And Databricks is providing some of that. So we're building using the sort of core features of Databricks, which is like model serving and AI gateway and what they call their Agentbricks platform. And then building libraries on top of that. Things like guardrail libraries or agents in themselves, so that we can compose agents quickly. So we're building this composable agent architecture. So yeah, that's what we're doing for a lot of customers, right? Building agents on Databricks and giving them the ability to govern the use of their LLMs across the business. And
is it size organization? Is it enterprise level organizations that you're sort of targeting, or is it a bit of a blend?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a blend. We're working with organizations at enterprise level sometimes on very large transformations of data. But we're also seeing, and they may already be on the Databricks platform, and this is just another workload that they're bringing on. Or it could be mid-market customers who are sort of just starting to, want to take advantage of AI and want to do it in the right way. So we're working with that mid-market. We don't see much SMB. SMBs who do use Databricks are typically digital native, like I don't know, Xero, or they're probably not even SMB anymore. They're mid-market, but they've got their own in-house teams that can do that and scale up.
You mentioned about timing as well. So technology at the right time. So obviously you've seen this as an opportunity at the right time and things. So you see a lot of potential and where this can go over the next few years. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a foundational technology that every business is going to need, and there's probably different flavors of it, right? There's competitive products, but Databricks is out front, leader in the Gartner quadrant. It's innovating. It's a privately funded business, which means it can move quickly. It can make acquisitions. It's well funded. It's raising sort of 10 billion every time it releases its earnings. It's and the founders are they're techies themselves, right? They came out of Berkeley University, having researched this technology and founded communities on GitHub around the foundational technology of MLflow and Spark and Unity Catalog, and they've gone on to be the founder-led business, really. So it's definitely growing. It's the talk of the town. We're seeing it's in every conversation around Lakehouse and AI.
Have you been thinking about that?
Funny story. I was actually at
Sorry, Steve.
sorry.
No.
I was at Auckland at the New Zealand Lounge in Auckland recently, flying to Australia, and I was wearing a Databricks T-shirt. Right, so value of merch. And this guy comes up to me. He goes, "Oh, do you work for Databricks?" And I said, "Oh, no, I don't. I work for a partner of Databricks." He goes, "Oh, my name's Patrick, and I'm one of the seven
wow.
founders of Databricks."
No way.
And he was here on holiday, and he'd seen that I'd been wearing the Databricks shirt, so he thought I must be working for his company. So I was chatting to him for about 10 minutes. It was great.
I was just going to ask there, Steve. Like, was the thought behind the business, was it something that you'd been thinking around for a while? Was it, or was it? How did the actual when you were starting to go into that business, what was the driving factor behind it?
Yeah, so I think I was looking to make a move and
Right.
do my own thing again. That's where I enjoy operating. Didn't really know what the right technology was or the right business was. And the person who, I think in your career, as you go through your career, you have a number of mentors, whether they're formal mentors or they're not formal mentors. And sometimes they're peers that you just bounce ideas off, right? So I've been talking to a few friends, and they said, yeah, the data space is where you need to be. So I think that sort of like moved me into that direction. And then I put out on a group of friends back in the UK going, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And got some advice there. And then, and also I was talking to the founder of the previous two businesses who said, yeah, I'd back a business in Databricks if you want to go down that route. So it was sort of those sorts of things. But I think the mentor network is really important in your career.
Just coming on to something which is dear to our heart and what our business is recruitment. So obviously you're starting a new business in this side of the world. You've mentioned you sort of haven't maybe kept in contact with this side of the world in terms of your network and stuff like that, and probably from a client perspective as well. Like, was it a challenge to get people to start with, or did you have people coming back from the UK who were able to lean on that moved to Australia and New Zealand, or how did you find that in terms of like, now I've got a business, how do I get the people that's going to help me be successful?
Yeah. So actually, it's really interesting the way you phrase that. So there was one person who came over to the UK who worked for Salesforce, and we were a Salesforce partner in the UK. So he was a partner account manager. He wasn't our partner account manager, but he was a Kiwi in London, and someone said, look, there's a Kiwi in the Salesforce tower, you should go meet. So I did. We went for lunch and we caught up every now and then and around industry events and things like that. He left and came back here. And every time I used to come back from the UK, I'd catch up for a coffee with him just to keep that network going. And one day I told him what I was doing, and he goes, I know a guy. He goes, he's awesome. He used to work at Databricks. You should have a chat to him about what you're doing. So I did. And it transpired that he'd always wanted to start a business and was looking for something new. So he was one of our first hires. So that was the power of the network, I guess, bringing in, and he's awesome. He knows all the people from Databricks because he used to work there, and he understands the industry, and he's well networked and really hardworking motivated person. So that's the power of the network. Another person I worked with at a previous company in Australia in the last couple of years. So so far we've been working and hiring through the network, people bringing in people that they've worked with before and they know and they trust. That's another sort of piece of career advice. I think I heard it on a podcast once and it really resonated, which is every day's an interview, right? So when you rock up to work, you're actually interviewing for your next job. You don't know it. The way you show up, the effort you put in, your colleagues notice. And when those colleagues go somewhere else, or they go up, and they're looking for someone to come with them or across, they look at those people that they've worked with in the past and go, that would be a great person in this situation. So I think people have to go into work, if they're going into work these days, with the mindset that every day is an interview, and I have to put.
Yeah. And then it's funny, I think we had a conversation maybe about a month or two ago, when we were just talking about doing this podcast, and you were saying that in terms of workforce and how you were thinking about scaling, you mightn't need as many people as you originally thought because of the way the agents are starting to do the work. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole consultancy model is changing rapidly, right? I think we're in a unique position because we're new, and we can model the business to that target state from day one, whereas some of the larger, more established players have to turn an oil tanker, if you like, and to reshape their business. Whereas we're sort of modeling a business in that future state. But yeah, we're thinking about everything being driven from AI, from in everything we do, whether it be in our go-to-market activity, and our outreach, and our and our presence on LinkedIn, and all the way through to the way we deliver. So yes, Claude Code. Everyone talks about Claude Code and how that's changed the world, but there's a lot more to that, right? There's how does AI change the way you manage projects, and how does it help you in your finance department and help you in marketing and sales? So we're thinking about that every time we do something. It's like, how can we make this more efficient, or more importantly, how do we scale this using AI? So I think there's a lot of focus at the moment on productivity gains from AI, right? And that's, depending on what camp you're in, that's driving a reduction in hiring. But there's also the other side of that, which is these tools also enable you to scale your sales team, right? Or to scale your marketing effort. And if it's done well, it should be able to drive your business to grow faster than just productivity improvements.
Where do you see, like, if you were to give advice to young people trying to get into the tech industry or consulting industry, what's the sort of skill sets do you feel that they should really focus on?
I really believe that skill sets can be learned, right? So I think you're really hiring the person. I think that's how I've always thought about it. I mean, I've hired people who are on apprentice schemes that turned out to be some of the best people I've hired, right? So they had no degree, they had no formal qualifications, but they were highly driven, and put as much effort in as they possibly could, right? And we're talking 22-year-olds that I remember one guy who came to me as an apprentice. I think the apprentice scheme said that we needed to pay him £12,000. Then we paid him 18, and he was stoked. For anyone that's listening, I think the average in the UK is about 35 to 40,000, right? And London might be a bit higher. So he came to us on this apprentice scheme. Yeah. We were embarrassed to pay him 12. 18 seemed like a fair compromise. And he came to me and goes, Steve, I need a pay rise. And I go, okay, well, why don't you go away and do this certification, an industry certification on Salesforce? And he came, and I said, I'll give you $5,000, thinking it would take him 6 months, right? So he comes back a couple of weeks later. He goes, I've done that certification, like my $5,000. I'm like, oh, geez. Right. He goes, okay, that's cool. What do I need to do next to get a pay rise? I'm like, okay, how about you do this certification? Put on the spot, right? So a couple of months later, he came back, I've done that second certification. I'm like, okay, now you're on 28K. And I'm like, okay, you're 28K, you've got 3 to 6 months experience in the space. Now you're knocking on a pretty decent salary. And I think we might have done that again once or something. And then, but he was in the office, he was working, he was learning stuff, he was adopting everything he could. And And then when we cut over to Accenture, he comes to me and goes, Steve, I'm not coming over to Accenture. And I go, mate, you've got no degree, you've got like a year's experience. Accenture's a huge organisation. They're very not strict, but they curate the people that they want to hire. And you're getting an open door to come into one of the biggest companies in the world and in this space. And a couple of years at Accenture, and you've just accelerated your career. You've got the golden ticket. And he goes, no, I got offered 55K, 58K, I think, to become the CRM manager at a tech startup. And I'm like, dude, I love you, but I'm a little bit nervous. But that's a job that you can't do. I was obviously a bit more practical than that. And if you get found out, for want of a better phrase, I can't hire you back. You don't have that golden ticket anymore, right? But he went out and he did it, and he proved me wrong, which is great. And then when I did my next business, a recruiter rang me up and offered me and I said, look, I don't want to hire him. It's going to cost me too much money. But just out of interest, what salary is he looking for? And they said 87,000. And I was like,
Wow. After how long, Steve? How long was that after?
From looking for around 12
Yeah,
grand,
so-
18 grand, 87 in 5 years. And what age was he at that stage?
Good going,
Late
though, eh?
20s, early 30s?
Wow.
Late 20s, I'd say. And yeah, mid to late 20s. And I think what that shows is that, look, it's not about the skills. It's not about, if you're the best programmer in the world, but you can't communicate with people and you can't be bothered getting to work on time, and you turn up in shabby clothes, and you don't put the extra effort in and don't put your hand up when someone asks for help. That's not going to get you far in your career. It doesn't matter how good a programmer you are. But if you're that guy that wants to go learn more, get certified, work extra hours to learn and engage on projects that maybe it's just shadowing a project that you're not actually assigned to or something like that. That's what's going to get you further in your career.
Do you think businesses, Steve, sometimes get too
I do,
caught up
yeah, I do.
in
And
hiring for
I think it's starting to change. I
technology
don't know what you guys are
skills
seeing.
rather than the soft stuff?
Some of the GSIs have sort of relaxed their requirement to have a degree.
Yeah.
I think they're realising that's not the be in and end all.
Yeah.
I think there's much more of a relaxed and attitude towards that deep skill, and I think a lot of companies are. And you must see this all the time, and I'm probably guilty of it, looking for unicorns, right? They're looking for the senior expert in a domain that can talk to C-suite, but can also write the code, and they've got to just step back and go, look, maybe this is 2 or 3 roles, and I think, and actually, think about that. I think there's a core of the market that's completely untapped, right? I think. If a company stood back and looked at what they needed in the time and the flexibility they could provide, I think there's a lot of women and mainly women, I guess, who have had children and are looking to return to the workforce 2 to 3 days a week. There is a lot of opportunity to bring those types of people into the organisation. Because often you don't need, like, rather than get a unicorn with all these skills, maybe you could have 2 or 3 of these part-time workers.
Okay. All right. Because it's funny what you made. Like, it's just like, it's one of the values which we bring as a recruitment company sometimes. And like, sometimes when a business will go and do their own advertising, they'll just be looking for something. They'll have a recruitment team, they'll just be looking for keywords, a thing, and then try and say, whereas when we talk to some people, we know within a few minutes, even though they might not have the skill set, they're a little, if they've got the personality, communication of that, we're like, this person's amazing, and then we'll go and sell that person, and you get them in the door and you get them more opportunity. As I said, there's
you're not quite right. As an employer, you quite often like
Yeah.
find them a role.
The
Right?
amount of times it happens.
So I've met with somebody now, and
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
she's awesome. I don't quite have the role for her, right? But I'm trying to find out how we find that role. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The amount of times it's happened with us, Steve, and just trying to say to a client, look, this is the CV, but you need to meet this guy, you need to meet this woman. She's an absolute star. I remember a few months back, we put forward it was a senior front end developer, didn't have all the technology stat that they were looking for, but we were adamant that they had to meet him. They did, and within 6 months, he was promoted into a lead. And, you know, that's kind of the value of, and the guy, don't get me wrong, was a great front end developer, but it had all the attributes that you were talking about previously in terms of that, you know, polished, articulate, smart, driven.
Yeah.
And
Okay, Steve.
that's why they hired him. You know what
That
I
was
mean?
good.
So,
Thank
yeah,
you very
super
much
important.
for coming on the podcast. Really good to know about your story, how you got to where you are now. And it sounds like you're in an exciting phase of where Manuka AI is. And yeah, we're really excited to see how that gets more and more successful over the next few years. And yeah, how you sort of scale your team, whether it's all people or AI agents or a mix of both. It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah. I don't have the answer, but I think it's going to be that AI agent approach at certainly at the low end, but at the same time, still looking for the junior people that can become those senior leaders, right? That can become the solution architects, the unicorns of the future with
All
those
right.
communication skills.
Thanks for coming on. We hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks very much for having
No
me, Sean
worries.
and
And to our
David.
listeners and
Cheers.
viewers, yeah, thanks very much for joining us again. As I said, this is our first episode of 2025 or 2026. What am I saying? 2025, 2026. We've got lots of really good, interesting guests coming on the show over the next few months. So we'll see you for the next one. Thanks very much.